Hi guys, Miss Francis here. Yesterday we talked about monosaccharides and disaccharides, which are organic molecules that fall under the category of carbohydrates. Today we're going to talk about our third and most complex type of carbohydrate, which are polysaccharides. They are the polymers of sugars. They are hundreds of thousands of monosaccharides linked together by glycosidic linkages. And their main functions are to provide energy, so it's energy storage, and to be used for building materials. So plants have polysaccharides just like animals have polysaccharides, but let's tackle the plant polysaccharides first. So you've got starch and cellulose. Let's discuss starch first. First of all, starch can be found within the chloroplasts of plants, and what they do, or what starch does, is it stores surplus glucose, and then the plant can withdraw it when it needs that glucose for energy or for carbon. Then animals, us, we feed on those plants and we access the starch to support our own metabolism. There are two forms of starch. You have an unbranched form called amylose and a branched form called amylopectin. So these are both types of starches, and they are both entirely composed of glucose monomers. Now, glucose has two possible ring structures. You can either have an alpha glucose or a beta glucose. And the way you tell the difference is by the positioning of the hydroxyl group. Is the hydroxyl group on the bottom, or is the hydroxyl group on the top? If the hydroxyl group is on the bottom, it's alpha glucose. If the hydroxyl group is on the top, it is a beta glucose. So starch is a polysaccharide that is composed completely of alpha glucose monomers. So let me say that again. Starch is a polysaccharide. It's a polymer of monosaccharides that is composed completely of alpha glucose monomers. Now let's discuss the second type of polysaccharide that can be found in plants. It's known as cellulose, and cellulose is found in the walls of cell plants, so they give those cell walls structure and support. Cellulose is also a polymer of glucose monomers, but cellulose, unlike starch, is going to use beta glucose monomers. So let's take a look at the structure of cellulose. So here you've got beta glucose monomer, and when they are joined together using dehydration synthesis and forming glycosidic linkages between those monomers, they make up cellulose. And the cellulose is going to be found in the plant cell walls and offer structure. Now notice the difference in the shape between cellulose and starch. So the starch, amylose and amylopectin, is going to be coiled, whereas cellulose is not coiled. Cellulose also plays a role for humans. Have you ever heard of eating fiber to aid in digestion? So cellulose helps our food pass through the digestive tract, which is then eliminated in feces as insoluble fiber. Animals also have important polysaccharides. Animals store glucose as glycogen. Glycogen is also coiled, and it is highly branched. Now, looking at glycogen, how would we know whether or not it's made up of alpha or beta glucose monomers? We can tell it's made up of alpha glucose monomers because you've got that branched and unbranched coiling pattern. Another really important polysaccharide that's found in animals is called chitin. Chitin is found in the exoskeletons of arthropods, that outer skeleton of arthropods, including insects, spiders, and crustaceans, the outside of lobsters, the outside of crabs. Those are made up of chitin. Chitin contains nitrogen, and it is also found in the cell walls of many fungi. So here's a really great video that Stephanie Castle created comparing cellulose, starch, and glycogen. And you know me, I like to make visual representations of what we learned. So if we take into account organic molecules, we know that carbs are a type of organic molecules. Carbs contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen with a 2-to-1 ratio of hydrogen to oxygen. So for every 2 hydrogen, there's going to be 1 oxygen. You can decipher a carbohydrate by its appearance because it will have a ring structure, right? And we will have some with 1 ring, some with 2 rings, some with many rings. Carbohydrates are hydrophilic because they possess that hydroxyl group, and the monosaccharides, the monomers, can be joined together through dehydration synthesis to form disaccharides as well as polysaccharides. So let's talk about number of rings in our 3 types of carbohydrates. We've got monosaccharides with 1 ring. Disaccharides are going to have 2 rings. And polysaccharides are going to have 3 or more rings. Your polysaccharides are also known as polymers, which are made up of the building blocks of monosaccharides, which are our monomers. Some examples of monosaccharides. So some examples of monosaccharides are going to be glucose, galactose, and fructose. Our examples of disaccharides are going to be maltose, sucrose, and lactose. Examples of our polysaccharides. Well, we've got all different types of polysaccharides, right? You've got your plant polysaccharides and our animal polysaccharides. In our animal, you've got glycogen and chitin. And in our plants, you're going to have starch and cellulose. So try and match the term with its description. The answers are obviously here for you, but see if you could do it without the answers. All right, so that is our discussion of polysaccharides. Our next discussion will be concerning lipids. Thanks.